Welcome to another episode of the Base Camp Country Podcast. My name is Kix Nelson. We have a co-host with us today, Pat McFadden. How you doing, Pat?
I am wonderful. How's everybody doing? Good?
Doing good, man. We're going to interview a gentleman by the name of Steve Sherk Jr. Steve has done a trail camera study, 150 trail cameras on about 100,000 acres of land. He's got some great insight, and he also runs a company called Sherk's Guide Service. We're here to talk to Steve today, get to know him a little bit, find out a little bit about this trail camera study, and a little bit about his guide service. How you doing, Steve?
Good. How are you guys tonight?
Doing
Real good.
Doing great. Well, we'll get into your study here in a little bit, man, but I got some questions about this how this whole thing got started in the first place for you. So, what in the world, how did you come up with this idea, and what made it start in the first place for you, man?
I don't know if I would even say it started out as much of an idea, but I've always been, collecting trail cam data pretty much as soon as I started using trail cameras. I probably started with just a few, and then every year it just seemed to grow, and you add on to it. Next thing you know, I was probably running nearly 100 of them. And that's really when I started to see some pretty crazy stuff, like getting, the end of the season and going through all the cards, and you'd look at certain dates and be like, November 3rd, like, why did I have so many trail cam pictures, these certain days? And I started to realize, okay, there's definitely something going on here, because year after year, as I would look over all this information, I would, it wouldn't always be the same dates either. It would just be, there's 5, 6, 7 times a year where it just seems like these cameras are just on fire. And then there's other days when they're completely dead. So the first year I really took it seriously. I mean, I paid attention to moon phase, barometric pressure, wind, all types of weather, even rain and snow and different things. And then right after the first year of documenting everything, a lot of different weather scenarios and moon and all that, like, they all showed that they are, a factor towards movement, but temperature by far just blew everything out of the water. And in fact, pretty much after that, I mainly have focused on temperature being the driving factor towards deer movement through this study. I'm not saying I don't pay attention to some, like, I pay somewhat attention still to moon phases and especially barometric pressure, but every year temperature seems to, at least with these northern deer, could be different in other places throughout the country, but definitely see temperature, 80% of the reason for these tremendous days of movement, and even the slowest days of movement are generally when it's super warm.
So you've got 150 trail cameras, right? Give or take.
Well, that's when I first did the real big documented study, but the past few years I've been running between 150 and 200. I think this year, 180, 190-ish. It varies because you got cameras breaking every week. You got occasionally one gets stolen. There's different factors. So the amount of cameras can fluctuate, but anywhere this year between 180 and 200. That's as far as how this year went.
And you're covering about 100,000 acres of ground doing that?
Exactly. Yep, that'd be a very close estimate. And that varies a little bit too from year to year, but we're not talking a little 500-acre patch. Massive amount of ground. These cameras are very well spread out in a variety of habitats, different locations, to try to make it very diverse and get a good widespread information.
How long you been doing this study, man?
Oh, Jesus, it's probably been 7 or 8 years now. But it's been, the past few years, like I said, it's been a little less diverse, because, like, even this year, I've only really paid attention, going back through the data, and I'm not fully done with this past season, but I've gotten a lot of it done already. But I'm mainly just focusing on temperature for the most part.
Gotcha. Well, let's get into that a little bit. So you've been doing this 7 or 8 years, and you kind of talked about, temperature is the main driving factor behind deer movement. So from what you're seeing, and you're in Pennsylvania, correct?
Yep. So these are northern deer. They're mountain deer, big woods. they see occasionally some tough winters, so they got some heavy winter coats. So it's something to keep in mind too that I want to make sure that everyone knows is this study only goes from October 1st to about December 10th every year, and those are the Pennsylvania hunting seasons. So I'm really only concerned about deer movement mainly during hunting season. I mean, yeah, there's some really cool things about deer movement any time of the year, but I really want to know what our deer are doing, the best times of movement, the worst times of movement during hunting season here in Pennsylvania.
I got you.
So I guess my question would be, do you, I'm sure it's, do you run any public land or do you run all private land, or is it a combination of both?
We're talking all public.
All public.
I've
Okay.
never even hunted or guided on private land in my life, so it's all public. Yeah.
So the cameras that you run, are they all card cameras, or do you run some trail cameras too, or do you have a combination of a little bit of everything? Or
I mean, we have a combination, but you're probably talking 90% regular non-cell cameras, and that's just because of lack of. I mean, this is big woods, remote country, lack of cell reception, but it's getting better. Like every year, they'll put in new tower in somewhere where you start to get more, more cell signal. So throughout time, I do plan to use more cell cameras. This year, I ran around 20 cell cameras versus, we still had roughly 150, 160 regular cameras or card cameras.
so when you set those cameras, of course you set them before season, whatever. So do you leave them? How often do you go check them? You leave them out all year and then get them at the end of the season, and then you get your data from that, and then kind of go year to year, or how does that? How do you do that?
Well, a lot of the above. I will say, like this year, I took down a lot of the data this year because every year there's 8 or 10 cameras that, people, because it's public land, you'll have SD cards stolen. So if you leave that card in there too long without collecting the data, you can potentially lose it. Cameras break, all those kind of things. So this year was the first year, every time I checked the camera, I would note the data. That way I had it, didn't lose it. I will say some years there's some, not a lot, but there's some cameras that would be in remote areas, maybe a new spot that I wouldn't even check till maybe even sometimes a year later, just leaving them out there just to learn the area and how deer use it. So a lot of different, there's a lot of different reasons why I might check a camera often. I might not check it, for a long period of time. But most of these cameras were checked probably every 2 to 4 weeks throughout hunting season, just because I'm a guide. I'm trying to find spots for my clients, learn what deer are doing in these areas. So I really kept up on it this year more than I ever have.
Cool. So do you, when you go, you check in your trail cams and you pull the SD card, you just have a laptop with you and you check it and you get the data right then and there and clear the card, or do you just mark each card and you have, how do you collect that
I
data?
download the entire SD card right to my iPhone, and then at the end of the day, which was a lot, but it was between 10 and midnight every day, through October and most of November this year, I was plugging in data. So, but it wasn't a lot of work doing it that way, but it was also exciting to see the process and the information very fresh versus like waiting till sometimes January, February, March or later. Like this year is like, holy cow, last week it was way better than this week. So it was a lot more fun doing it that way. And I think it helped me too, really just stay on top of things this better, or, a little bit better this year, guiding and paying attention even to like what phase of the rut, things like that. A lot of that you can even learn just from those trail cameras that you're reading.
So how are you picking the spots where these trail cameras go, man? Are you just going out and finding random spot? Or are you studying the area a little bit, putting them on ridge tops? How's that work?
I would say this year, 40 to 50% were on like traditional scrapes that we set up on every year. I'm not saying a scrape is always the best spot to hunt, but a lot of these cameras too are just to get intel, inventory, what deer in the area. But there was a lot of cameras this year literally just set up on oak trees. We had a really good red oak acorn crop here this year, and sometimes you'll go down a ridge and only 4 or 5 trees are producing acorns. You figure, one of those trees there, you just set the camera up on those dropping acorns, and you're going to get a lot of pictures that way. Some cameras were set up on food sources. Some are set up just on trails. Even elevation here in the mountains, I fluctuate with, because there's times when the deer are more active low. There's times they're more active up high or midway. I had some in bedding areas. I mean, I really try to, like I said, cast a very widespread net of putting these cameras in all different kinds of locations, habitats, crossings, you name it, because then the information really becomes more effective, collecting when you know that you've covered, all the bases.
Yeah. So I got to know, man, are you sponsored by a trail camera company or what?
No, and I I can't say that anyone's ever really reached out to me and offered me like a major deal. It probably depends on how many followers you have and stuff like that. I'd love that
Sure.
because, I mean, I'll be honest with you, I'm buying 20, 30, 40 new cameras every year between some breaking and advanced technology. I mean, you name it, like it does become an expense. I'd love to be sponsored. In fact, if I if I could choose a sponsor of any type of product, like it would be a trail camera company. Like I feel that would be the best fit for me. But yeah, hopefully someday, that would be awesome. Right now, I'm just spending a lot of money in the trail cam game, to say the least.
And I bet you are. We got to get you
Yep.
a trail camera sponsor, and we need to get you a battery sponsor too. So
Yeah. And that the one good thing though, because it's big woods, we're not talking like even thousands of pictures a week. There's times I'll leave a camera out for a year, and you might have 3 to 5,000 pictures, and that might sound like a lot to some people, but that's really not a lot. And most of my trail cameras, I'll get a year's worth of battery for every camera. So I mean, it's still expensive, but I figure every camera, one new set of batteries every year. Versus, in some places throughout the country doing something like this, you'd probably change the batteries 3, 4 times a year at least. So the batteries aren't killing me, but buying new cameras every year, that eats up a lot of costs.
do you
Luckily,
use the
it's a
same
tax
cameras or?
write-off too, though.
Yeah, that's nice.
Yeah.
Are you using the same branded camera, same type of camera, just kind of whatever's on sale?
Honestly, whatever camera seems to be, the best deal at the best time, right after hunting season's a lot of time out, right now is a really good time, or right after Christmas, you can find some really good deals. I will say we probably use Muddy and Wild Game Innovations more than any, and honestly, they're more the cheaper route. But the problem with, on public land, and, we have a lot of bear problems, is it's very risky to buy one, two, three, $400 cameras, leave them out there, and then lose them. When these days now you can often buy 3 cameras for $100, or 30 some dollars is not out of the realm for buying a trail cam anymore. It may not be the best quality, but I don't really care so much about picture quality. If I can tell it's a good buck, 99% of the time, I can still tell what buck it is. I'm not looking to frame these pictures on my wall anywhere. Honestly, the majority of my pictures, I wouldn't even post on social media, but that's not a big deal to me. I'm just collecting data. These cameras are teaching me what I need to know, and that's really all that matters to me. Yeah, I probably only get 2, 3 years out of a camera, but at least in my opinion, I don't like to take the risk. I could spend 10 grand on a bunch of cameras, and who knows, you might lose 2, 3, 4 grand in 1 year to different factors. So that's just the route that I've chosen.
You bet. You bet. Well, let's talk about the data a little bit, man. Tell us what
Yeah.
you've learned so far.
Yeah. So throughout the years doing it, every year, somewhere between October 15th and November 15th is when I'll see the best movement. And that is very typical based on the Pennsylvania rut and even the rut throughout a lot of the country in the Northeast. But the most interesting factor, and I know I touched on this a little bit before, but what's most interesting is these dates can sometimes be weeks off. Like this year, it's unbelievable, although I don't know if it will stand, but right now, the best day for movement so far in the data, and it's probably 70% done, was October 15th. And there's never been ever a time in these 7 years roughly of doing this when anywhere near October 15th was the best date. But if I remember right, I should have, and I do apologize, I should have had some of this data with me at the moment, but I'm pretty good at remembering. But I'm pretty sure we had a high of 44 and a low of 30 on October 15th, which that is very untypical that time of year. I mean, you can get somewhat colder weather, but even till mid-November, like that, those temps on that date were top three that we had the entire archery season. So once again, it might not have been peak rut, but temperature came in at the right time. We had a cold front mid-November, and that was actually the best cold front we had from, like I said, October 15th to mid-November. And even throughout the entire study, from October 1st to December 10th, that movement there is arguably, I mean, it might stand up to be, the best day of movement the entire year, where last year, the best time for movement last year in 2023 was October 30th, October 31st. And that's pretty common in Pennsylvania. But once again, it's temperatures. It wasn't anything to do with the dates. It was having prime temperatures. And if we want to talk temperature a little bit, what I've learned through doing this is you want to have close to what I call 30-30 days. And that's when you have high temps in the 30s and low temps 30 degrees or less. That's when our movement is at its best. In 2023, we had low 30s around Halloween and high 20s and low 30s, for the lows. And just given that time of year too, like, especially throughout most of the country, you have a prime cold front or prime weather around Halloween in the rut. I mean, you really can't ask for much better scenario. So that was more of a classic one. But then in 2022, the best date for movement was November 13th. So you look in these past 3 years, you got anywhere from October 15th to Halloween to mid-November for this best day of movement. And sometimes even the best week can be 2, 3, 4 weeks off. But it's always, once again, somewhere between October 15th and November 15th. And I don't mean to over talk, but I will say, after November 15th, our rut starts to die off. And what happens is once you get into the post rut, and then you get cold temperatures, especially our bucks, because I also want to make sure that I mention too that this is only buck movement. I don't pay that much attention to does. I find does to be way more consistently daytime active than bucks. But our buck movement always starts to die off about November 15th, no matter what the temperature is. But in fact, like in December, especially, and maybe the last 10 days of the study, if it gets very wintry out, a lot of winter weather, super cold, our buck movement will be completely dead almost. So cold temperatures after the rut don't play as big a part here in the big woods.
So, Pat, you can jump in here in a second, but I just want to ask one quick question here. What about if it gets too cold? Does that seem to affect it? Do bucks not move as much if it's really cold outside?
I wouldn't say too cold temperature wise. Where it does slow down even in the rut, as I've seen, is if we get very cold temperatures. Say you get 20-degree temperatures with high winds, 20 to 40 mile an hour winds, that movement will shut down. Deer will just get on the leeward side or out of wind, and they will bed down if it gets very cold and windy combination. But I've seen it in the teens before, in the rut here. and we still had great movement. But I will say I've never seen it get into single digits in the rut here in the time that I've done this. Maybe there is a certain temperature, which would be very unlikely here in the rut, even though we're in the northern part of the country. But the winters have been so mild here the past several years anyway that we get very few below 0 days anyway, or even single digits. But I don't, if I was to make a good accurate guess, just opinion based, I don't think even 10-degree day, especially like, first week in November, I think it would only help in my opinion.
Gotcha.
Oh, so I live in Indiana, so I'm the north central part of Indiana. I'm about an hour, probably not even that, 40 minutes from the Illinois line.
Okay.
So, but I live up in the northern part. So we have a lot of ag in our area. And I joke all the time where I live, it's so flat you can watch your dog run away for 3 days, right? I mean, it's, the water tower blocks the wind kind of place. So the wind blows pretty much every day here. So, it's actually different. We run a few cameras too, but just by looking, because we can see so much, just watching the fields and what deer do. And it's really odd when the wind doesn't blow very much. The deer are like totally different animal. They're so on alert. Sure. That everything that moves is a problem, right? It's a predator, or what have you. So yeah, it's a little different for us. So it's pretty cool to watch. And then, where I live, I've got some woods here where I live, but we have big ag fields, and and you guys know it too. But when a cold front's moving in, one's coming that night or that evening or even that afternoon, the deer are out in these cornfields and bean fields and the acorns, and they're just gorging before this cold front rolls in. So I get to actually see it, instead of watching trail cams. We do a lot of glassing. We can sit and watch. And, tonight I was out running some coon traps tonight, and I just pulled my UTV in there behind the house and going back, and there was about 22 deer back there in a cornfield, and we got a little bit of front rolling in tonight, so they were all out there. Yeah. Normally you go out there and you'd see 4, 5, 6, but tonight the whole herd's out there. Yeah. So there again, we're post rut. We're clear up into the, probably, I think it was 8 or 9 days ago, we saw a couple bucks pushing some does for that late rut. Some of that didn't get done, but, we still see the same thing. We don't do it in the amount of cameras you have. We run 10, 12 cameras on our farms, and we watch it. And we're kind of the same way. We like to watch the deer movement. We're not really counting how many deer we see, or we're not really saying, oh, we got to hunt that buck, we got to do this. So you went way beyond, and I'll be honest with you, I never paid attention to the temperature, but I'm going to start, right? I was always looking at pressure and moon and everything, but I guarantee you I will start now.
Yep. I've talked to a lot of people throughout the country, and I've been on several other podcasts similar to this. A lot of people find this interesting. It's amazing how once I talk to people about this, they're like, man, I think I want to pay more attention to it. So then they start to do something similar, and then they'll keep in touch with me. And I've never had someone say like, Steve, you know what, you're wrong. Temperature doesn't seem to matter with the deer movement. Now, I'm not going to say that the dates are always the same, because we're all seeing obviously different weather throughout the country. Rut can be different, north, south, east, west, that kind of stuff. But overall, even though I'm not personally doing it in a several state study, but like, I would still argue that whoever does this, whoever pays attention, that temperature won't be the driving factor towards movement. Because we might also want to talk about warm temperature eventually. But like, you'd be amazed how bad it can get with warm temperature. Which maybe I think anyone throughout the country deer hunting knows it can be tough in hunting whitetails in warm weather, but especially here in the big woods and the mountains and northern deer, like, man, warm weather can just kill a rut here, at least during daytime hours.
It killed it here this year. I know that, man. I'm in Missouri, southwest corner of Missouri, and it was just dead this year. I mean, I think the total deer harvest numbers for the entire state were down like 25, 30%. It was insane. Yeah, it was terrible.
And that's exactly what can happen. I mean, and that's what's tough, being an outfitter like me, is people might come one year and, they have a really good experience. They get good weather. And then they're like, hey, I want to book those same dates next year, Steve. I know I hit it right and I must have figured it out. And I'll just shake my head, say, I'm telling you, it's all the weather here. I mean, you're coming at the right time of year. And I'm not going to say that warm weather makes it to where deer don't rut at all or bucks don't move at all, but I mean, it can really slow it down. It can slow it down real bad. And I mean, you have 2-3 weeks of the rut with mostly warm temperatures, and there goes your rut. You basically you missed out this year for the most part. So that's exactly what can happen. And even me that I put in a lot of off-season work, putting all these cameras out, scouting, and like sometimes I've had years where I've worked my butt off so hard, but we didn't get good conditions, and not as many deer get killed. You have a lot of disappointed hunters. It can be frustrating. So when you don't have the right weather on your side.
Yeah, this year our rifle season, I can't remember what day it started, but anyway, it always ends a couple days before Thanksgiving. So 10 days before that is when it starts or whatever. But man, it was like, 60 degrees during our rifle season this year. And it was just absolutely terrible.
Yep. Oh, yeah. Those deer got their winter coats on and can just kill you.
Yeah. So do you keep track of time of day movements?
I did that one year. And well, I did it multiple times, one year pretty consistently, but you know what I have found? I haven't done it anymore because another thing is like, until you really do what I do, like the amount of information and like, this is just literally like a hobby. Like I don't get paid to do this. So it can be overwhelming, the amount of information that you want to collect. And then, but I guess getting to the point of like time of day, like it is very consistent. I believe that our best ruts or our best rut movement here in the northern part of the country is generally in the mornings, not right at daylight. I'd say anywhere between like 8 to 11 a.m. But then you also see that arguably, because I remember the one year between like 11 and 3, when I kept that information, it seemed like mature bucks. You probably have more mature buck pictures between like 11 and 3 in the middle of the day during the rut. And that is very true. And you hear a lot of other hunters talk about that too, that's a really good time. But there's also some people say sit all day during the rut, but like, I'm also going to tell you that, if it's 60, 70 degrees, middle of the rut, or, midday during the rut, like that midday can be really sluggish too. You got to hit it just right sometimes. You might just have to hit it at the right phase of the rut too. But I really think overall though that, and this is also based just on guiding, because the one good thing about when you have multiple clients, in trees throughout the rut year after year, and you're talking to them and seeing what they're seeing, and it's not just your own hunting, like it's amazing the consistencies you see. Like most people here have more action in the morning than even the afternoon. It seems like it's always, like I said, 8 to 11, 8 to noon, then it kind of dies off. And then the last hour or two before dark, it'll pick up again. And you just see those consistencies with that, where I just, after time, it's like, you know what? I'm probably not going to learn a whole lot more every year. I think I'm seeing what I'm going to see pretty much year after year with that.
Sure. Makes sense.
Yeah. But once again, the reason why I continue to do this every year is that the temperature thing is the dates are different every year. And that's what intrigues me. And maybe eventually I won't do it after a while, because it's so inconsistent that like, it's almost to the point where, yeah, I know somewhere between October 15th and November 15th we're going to have the best days for movement. But, it's just like, it's so unpredictable anymore. And that's just because the weather is unpredictable. At least here in Pennsylvania, I mean, you could get snow on Halloween and you could get 80-degree temperatures on Halloween. I've seen both before. Like, You just don't know what's going to come. And if they ever figure out a way where they can forecast the weather a year in advance, I would be a rich man when it comes to. I'd be booking hunters left and right for about 1 week, and that'd be it. I'd say not worth coming for the most part. I can at least talk a little bit more. I should mention, even 50-degree temperatures aren't all that great for movement. Once again, I like to see at least 40s, but the best are 30s and 20s throughout this study. But what I want to tell people that are listening is like, you might think, it just doesn't feel that hot. 50, 60 degrees ain't all that bad, but to a whitetail in the rut, like, it's hot.
Pretty hot.
So you don't seem to get the potential for a lot of these prime weather days anymore. Like, I'm not going to say I don't know. I don't follow global warming and all that, but what I will say is it does seem like year after year, as time has gone on, we're seeing less of these cold weather events versus getting more and more warm weather. And that's making it more challenging to hunt the rut. We are doing some things differently, like in the mountains, it's generally cooler down low. It's cooler near water. We also find like north and east slopes, you have cooler air. So there are ways that you can still see more deer movement, during these warm, or these stretches of warm weather, but you still can never find like those magical days where, man, it's just on fire all day. You just don't see it when we get these, temperatures, anything 50 or warmer. I mean, it can be very frustrating.
I remember what I was going to ask you. Do you keep all these old photos on like an external hard drive or anything? Do you keep all that information?
I keep the information. The photos, I really don't. I mean, if it's a really good picture, I'll save them on the computer, on my phone, but the photos, not really. After a year, I'll just kind of delete them, or just because, once again, I mean, you're talking thousands upon thousands of photos, and it's unless it's a really good picture, it doesn't really mean much to me. But the data, yeah, I mean, I know I have at least 3 or 4 years back of data. I should have, unfortunately, I don't think I have 6, 7 years ago. I don't even know what happened to it, but I didn't realize that it was going to turn into what it did. I'd save a couple years in a row and be like, okay. And then you start to get on podcasts and talk about it. And then, but once again, no matter what I do, I'm telling you, you're going to see I can email you, you guys, especially at the end of when I'm done with all this year, like, nothing's going to beat temperature. I've done this 6, 7 years in a row. There's never been a day, like, I always talk about the best day of the year. Like, what was the best day for movement? It's never been a day when it wasn't prime temperatures. It's never been. I don't believe it ever will be. And I've argued with people because people will say, like, Steve, where I hunt, it's always on fire November 1st to 6th or whatever. Well, in 2021, our best day was November 6th. We had a high of 50, which is a little warm, but we also had a 20-degree morning, which ended up being the coldest morning of the rut. And in the woods, those cold temperatures will hold true. Like, that cold air will keep the forest chilled, more than what you think. But then in 2022, November 6th was the worst day of the rut, but it was like a high of 70 and lows in the 50s. So maybe it is a little different from state to state, but I don't believe, once again, a temperature will ever be outruled by anything else.
The only reason I asked that question is because I wondered if you could, I don't know how that would work, but if you still had your pictures, or if you had all of your data that you've collected, I wonder if you could hook up with, like, I don't know, a Purdue or a MSU or something, and give that information to these colleges and say, hey, figure out what you can here's my information. Do what you guys will with it. You ever thought
Right.
about
No,
doing something
I
like
would
that?
love to do that. Yeah, I think especially someone that like basically that's their job, like they could really dive into it deeper and they have more education than me when it comes to studying stuff like that. I mean, I'm just an average guy. I didn't go to college, just a super passionate deer hunter. So like, I can only go so far with this, but I would love to do that if there was someone that was ever interested. I think I would learn more from it as well. Um, so yeah, if someone ever wants to reach out, do something like that, I would be more than willing to share that information.
Yeah, I mean, I just think it'd be a great project for a college kid, man. Maybe somebody looking
Yeah.
to, I mean, I can't even, with the amount of information that you've already put together, if you gave them that information, they could, dude, I bet you they'd come up with some crazy stuff that you
Yep.
and I would never even think of. You know what I mean?
Well, yeah, and I've even thought about that with like like cell cam companies where a lot of the pictures like they have they have just as much contact with the information coming off your cameras as you like it's surprising that like there's not like Muddy or Stealth Cam or whoever is not like using everyone's trail cam data or at least having you like just sign something or would you be willing to share your data with us because like I really think trail cameras are the ultimate tool to learning about deer. Like they are out there 24/7. I leave a lot of them out 365 days a year. The amount of information you can collect from trail cameras is just phenomenal where like all that data could be collected. And I mean, we're getting to the point with like artificial intelligence where you can throw this information into computers in the blink of an eye. It can tell you all kinds of stuff where I am surprised there's not something like that going on because people, especially, very serious diehard hunters, like they drool over this kind of stuff. And even as I have, if as I have, you got more into this study, like it's actually affected me somewhat as a hunter because not that you shouldn't hunt when you can. I would never tell someone, hey, it's not worth going out there. But then again, like I know when it's going to be a tough day and I know when it's going to be a phenomenal day. And like a lot of times if there's things to do around the house or, something maybe a little more important that I should be doing and it's 70 degrees out, I'll say heck with going hunting because I see that cold front coming in 3, 4 days. I'd rather hunt then than just be out there and, putting things off to the side when my chances are, much more minimal, per se. So it definitely affects you mentally. Maybe some good, some bad.
Well, Pat there works at Purdue. Maybe he can hook you up with some college kid that one needs to write a
Uh,
paper or something.
you
Yeah.
know what? I do have the connections with the professors of all the wildlife and everything. So yeah, if you're
Yeah.
really interested in doing something like that, yeah, I can do some talking to them and see if there's a grad
Okay.
student or somebody because they actually have a whitetail master's degree right at Purdue now. So there's some whitetail management. You can get a master's degree in a whitetail management style. So
Yeah.
that maybe somebody may be really interested in that, and yeah, you could get your name in some writings and use that
Yeah.
information to help somebody do a thesis. And yeah, who knows what that could bring for sure.
Yeah. Especially even, it might be best just to, once I get done with just this year, but there's been some things with the moon this year in the rut. Like when I first started, I will say that like, I didn't think I noticed much with, the moon and the rut having any correlation, but then past 2, 3 years, based off moon calendars and that, and rut predictions, it's been a lot more accurate. And eh, then again, like I'm seeing some temperatures coming in at the right times too. But I have been siding more towards what the moon might have more of an effect on the rut. Like here's something this year too, and a lot of your northeast rut predictions. They predicted this year that mid-November you would see a spike in early rut activity, and then you would see a trickle rut until about mid-November. Then you'd see another spike, and that's exactly what my data is showing again this year. similar to the moon, but it's crazy too because temperature played a part in all those days as well. But I would like, some people that have more time than me to, every now and then go back and look at all different, factors again and see what's also influencing some of this stuff.
Yeah, I mean, they could look at wind, they could look at pressures, they could look at moon phases, they could look at, whatever. I mean,
Yep.
yeah, there's a ton of data they could put together with what you've got so far. I think it'd be a great idea.
You know,
And
it's pretty refreshing too, because like you say, in the dates from the October 15th, up into that November 12th, 15th time frame, that's kind of the same thing of our peak rut times here. And sometimes we have an early rut, sometimes we have a later rut, but our gun season comes in right in the peak of the rut. So, but it's pretty cool because when I was growing up hunting, that we didn't have computers and we didn't have cell cams, and I don't even remember seeing a trail cam till I was probably in the workforce, as a working man. But I used to keep track in a notebook, and every time I would get back to the truck, I would write down, right, and we'd go home and you'd watch the news and you'd see what the weather was or the temperature was, or so I have. It's kind of neat because I'll go back and look at. I haven't did it for years and years. This is back in the mid '80s, late '80s, and maybe into the early '90s. I had everything written down, and I did it for my for deer hunting and for trapping. Is what I did, right, just to see. But it's pretty neat to hear you talk about, just we always kind of knew when the cold fronts would come in, that the deer are going to move. But we always, in my mind, I always thought it's because they're putting on the feed bag, right? They were moving because they needed to eat. They knew the weather might get bad for 3 or 4 days, and they were trying to, get some energy in their system. But now that listening to you talk about that, I'm going to go back and look at my handwritten notes and my scribbles, and because I would keep a track of how many deer I saw and what time of the day. I'd look at my watch. Nobody wears a watch anymore, but look at your watch and see what time movement was, and like you said, and I think a lot of people should kind of take that too, is hunt on the good days, right? I mean, if you want to hunt, like you said, don't hunt, or hunt when you can hunt, but if it's not right, don't hunt. And I've had some people that come to my place and onto my farms and hunt, and there's some days, are you going hunting? I'm like, well, I'm not, because I don't have to, right? And I said, and I'm kind of like you, I mean, I want to take you, and you're here to hunt for 3 or 4 days, and you got to hunt, but I may go sit just to watch, but so it's kind of funny that it's the same across the states, that the weather drives the deer movement.
yeah,
But
and
Definitely
it's
does,
just
Johnny.
fortunate that, and not to interrupt, but it's just fortunate that for hunters, like, there are things that we can capitalize on, and it's not just like random. Like, there, in my opinion, it's hard to beat the rut for deer movement. I'm not going to say that, it's probably not the best time to kill an individual deer, like a buck per se. Like, target certain bucks is harder in the rut, but like, we do have enough information out there that we know certain weather conditions, times a year, different factors like that we have learned that can capitalize on and like increase our odds and chances of success. Like, that's what's awesome. And like, there are certain times where a lot of those factors line up, and like, those are the days I've told people before, like, this was back maybe before I was guiding real heavily, because one thing about guiding is you don't hunt as much as what some people think. But like, I always used to say, like, if there's a lot of different factors pointing towards good buck movement, the only reason why you won't see me out in the woods would be at my own funeral, because there's nothing that's going to stop me from getting out there. But I really think, like, if you're a serious hunter, it's so important to try and get out there when you have those prime conditions. Like, your odds of success are tenfold, honestly.
Well, Steve, let's talk about that a little bit. We got about 15, 20 minutes left here. Let's talk about your guide service a little bit, man. Tell us a little bit about that. I'm curious.
Yeah, so it's up here in northern Pennsylvania. I've been doing it, I kind of did it off and on for a little while, but very consistently, like every year, the past 10 years. I mean, it was really, really hard at first, because Pennsylvania is not known as like a trophy state per se. I mean, it's known for its deer hunting, but not a lot of people, for quite some time, like, nobody wanted to travel to Pennsylvania and pay someone to take them hunting. So it took a lot of marketing. It took a lot of, meeting different people. Just like in any business, it took its time to really start to develop. But, in the past 5 years, we fully booked, didn't have one opening, once the season started. It's gone really well. I have people come now from all over the country, Canada, Florida, I mean, to north, south, east, west. And that's been pretty amazing too. Like, you get someone from like Florida, like, I want to come up there. I've been following you on Instagram, like, see all the pictures. I want to come to Pennsylvania and hunt. And, it's public land, it's big woods. So, I kind of, I feel extremely blessed, like, that the good Lord, has really been behind me in all this, because it's something I'm really passionate about too. Like, yeah, don't get me wrong, I wish I could hunt more, but like, when you see that you have an impact on someone else's success and their hunt, and like can make a difference in their hunting season, like, it's a feeling like no other. Like, it honestly, in some ways, feels better when you help someone kill a big deer versus you getting it yourself. I mean, it's kind of, there's two different types of feelings, but at the end of the day, like, it's a better feeling inside. Like, you know what? Wow, I made that person's year. So you get a lot out of it, in deep down inside, and to be able to make an added income. It's not my full-time job. I also do landscaping too, but just to be able to say, yeah, like, I'm in the hunting industry, and, I don't wake up, at least during hunting season, I don't wake up every morning like dreading to go to work. Like, I'm excited to get out there and scout and help people in any kind of way. And then they all come back to the cabin at night, and you get to hear their stories, and, come up with new game plans, or, all that stuff. Like, it's just something I'm extremely fortunate, that the good Lord has blessed me with.
So do you guide for just rifle, just bow, or both? How do you do that?
I do 2.5 weeks of archery, and then sort of just a week of gun. I do have some people, because we only have a 2-week gun season here in Pennsylvania, but I do have some people that come up every year where I just give them waypoints. But I generally take that week off because that's also our family deer camp. So the people that come that I guide the first opening week, I rarely even see them face to face. Like, I've done all the scouting, so a lot of times, I can just give people waypoints, still put them in really good areas, doing it that way. But most of our clients, like, it's meals and lodging included. We basically take care of everything but the deer processing and then buying their license. But you try to make it as stress free, and as enjoyable and relaxed. Like, I feel like when you put food in their mouths, and, all they have to do is go out and hunt, they got a nice, comfortable place to sleep. Like, that's when people really start to want to come back year after year, when they have a quality experience like that.
Yep, I agree, brother. Well, that's awesome, man. I'm glad to hear a little bit about that. We got one last little section we always like to do here with all our guests, man. We call it our quick draw questions.
Yeah.
I'm going to ask you here about 20 questions, man. You just fire off, give me your answer as fast, quick as possible. You ready?
All right, sounds good.
All right, man. Favorite camo brand?
Realtree.
Crossbow or
Hey.
compound bow?
Compound.
Compound. What'd you say before that, man? You cut out a little bit.
Well, I was just going to say, I mean, do you want me to explain why, or are we just trying to make these one-word answers?
You can do whatever you want, man. There's no right or wrong answer.
All right, I'll just I won't try to go too long, but I think there's a lot of great camo patterns out, on the market per se. But like, I've always loved the Realtree guys. I've enjoyed watching their TV shows, and really saw a passion for whitetail hunting. So that's why I like Realtree. A lot of times it's just something stupid like that. And I will say, getting to the compound or crossbow question, I do like to use a compound more. However, this year, I used the crossbow, and a lot of years I've used crossbow more than compound, just because, when I'm guiding, and then I do get time to hunt, like, I don't get the time to practice. My son's heavily involved in sports. I'm usually coaching where, yeah, and I know there's probably going to be some people that don't like the fact that, certain people use crossbows, but like, I want to be able to archery hunt, but I don't feel that I can go out there and ethically be accurate for deer. So that's why at times I'll use a crossbow.
Admirable. I like it. All right, man. Favorite brand of bow?
Probably be Hoyt. Shot a lot of different bows throughout my life, but I've never had a Hoyt that I've ever had a problem with. It seems like I can pick up almost any Hoyt with my draw length. And it just fits good and shoots good. I've always been a fan of Hoyts.
Nice. Next question. Favorite bow sights?
Favorite bow sights? Jeez. Honestly, I think still a lot of mine are just the old True Glows. I'm known to keep bows for a long time. I don't have, and that's another thing with me. Like a lot of my stuff's pretty old school. I'm not the type that buys a new bow or new gun every year. I mean, my bow's pretty old. So, most of my sights have been the old True Glow brand.
Brother, I shoot a 2010 Matthews Triumph bow. So
There you go. Yep.
I still shoot a 1988 Mach Flight 4 PSE.
love
Shoot
it.
aluminum arrows, 6-inch overdraw. Yep. So yeah.
I mean, when something's working and you don't have to change anything up, and it's like a part of your body when it comes to having a bow feel right. So I get it. Like that's exactly how I am. But still, if I don't shoot a lot, so I'm not honestly. That's probably one of my weaknesses as a hunter. I'm not someone that just pick up a bow without practicing and put it in the bullseye. Like I got to be shooting weekly to be pretty accurate, and it doesn't matter if I've been shooting that bow for years or not. So that's one downfall to it.
Pat, I can't wait to get up to Indiana and see that bow. I want to play with that thing.
Yeah, well, it's if you're man enough to pull it, it's 78 pounds. It's got 20% let off. So yeah, I mean, you got to man up.
Oh, wow. 78 pounds. I shoot 70, but I don't know if I could get up there to 78. That's tough.
Yeah. Well,
All right.
there's. I tell you what, though, a little something there. Those new bows, I've shot some, and they have no wall. The wall, when you pull them back, there's nothing. It doesn't feel right to me. I've shot that other bow for so long, and I crossbow hunt too. But when there's not enough pressure back on that end result, there's just nothing there. It wants to creep on me. I let it creep. And on my bow, there's so much there that you have to hold. And when you lock in, it's there because you're holding it, right?
Yep.
And you get to the 80% let offs instead. There's nothing there. It just feels weird to me. So never could get used to shooting them.
Fair enough. All right, Steve. Next question is favorite broadhead.
Favorite broadhead? That's kind of changed throughout the years. The past couple years, I've used Schwacker. They've just been like, how do I want to say? They've kind of been flawless for me. I know a lot of people don't like to shoot mechanicals, shoot fixed blades, but another thing I like about Schwackers and some of your mechanicals is I love a heavy blood trail. I like a big entry and exit wound. I'd rather have a good blood trail, than almost anything else. So that's something that just gives me a lot more confidence. Especially too, like I can be an inch or two off, but if I got a lot of cut in diameter, still got a lot more, margin for error hitting an artery or multiple organs. So that's kind of at least the way I think.
We had Trent Ellis. You know Trent Ellis?
I've heard it. Yeah.
Yeah, we had Trent Ellis on the podcast last week, and him and I both shoot G5s, and he said the same exact thing. He said, man, I hate G5s, but I love them because they kill the deer. The deer will always be dead, but their blood trail sucks.
Yep. Well, and I think that has also been a factor, being in this guiding business is like every year I'm on lots of different blood trails, and especially, I mean, if you don't have snow and you got hardly any blood, you lose so many deer. Like it's just so frustrating when you can't recover that deer. And I mean, I know I've had times where I've had deflections because I've shot a mechanical or a good buck being broadside, arrow can deflect off a rib, or you can shoulder punch a buck and get hardly any penetration. But if you hit that deer somewhere in the rib cage, with the mechanical broadhead and, roughly 2-inch cutting diameter, the amount of damage can just be phenomenal. I mean, I've seen exit wounds 4 or 5 inches wide. It literally just blows them right open, and blood trails literally looking like you just poured a hose for 100 yards. So, to each his own. I can see they both have pros and cons.
Yes, they do. Absolutely. Next question. Go-to rifle caliber.
I mean, I don't want to say go to anymore. I've been using my Tika 7mm 08, just a 120 grain bullet. Um, it's one of those things too. For me, I don't know if I would say there's a go-to caliber, but like similar to a bow, I have certain guns that I own that like I just pick that gun up and it fits right, it feels right. I can get on a deer better. It's very accurate gun. But, I always tell like my gun clients, we prefer at least 25 to 30 caliber in that range, and at least 120 grain bullet for deer. Other than that, it's whatever suits you better, whatever you're more confident with. Like, I don't know if there really is an actual best deer caliber. I think that could be argued between many different people.
Yep. Dude, I tell you, my favorite, I've killed more deer with my Marlin 30-30 with open sights than I have anything else.
Exactly.
It's
Yep.
what's comfortable to me, man. I think I can throw it up quick.
Yep.
I can follow it quick. It's my favorite gun by far.
There's probably been more deer in this country killed with a 30-30 than maybe any other caliber. I mean, that back in, even when I first started hunting, and I mean, I'm only 38, started when I was 12, but most of the young guys I knew were using 30-30s then. So, I mean, that at one time was the caliber the gun everyone was using.
I love it, man. I absolutely love it. I have 270 that I shoot and 308, but man, I just always seem to fall back to that 30-30. Favorite rifle brand?
I mean, I really love my Tika, but throughout my family, I mean, talking generations of hunters, we've had a lot of luck with Rugers. A lot of Rugers that are, still working right. I love the safety. Like, I'm picky about where the safety is on my deer rifle. I either like it, I mostly prefer right where my thumb is behind the scope, because there's been times, at least for me, I'm not saying for everyone else, where like I'll be watching a buck or deer in the scope, and then I'll have to take my eye off. Not that I should, but sometimes you'll take the eye off to turn the safety off. Then you got to get back on the deer. Sometimes the deer's gone, but that's one thing I really liked about those Rugers, at least the way they fit me, was literally right where my thumb sits. I just got to move my thumb a quarter inch. I never take my eye off the scope or the deer. They fit really good. And they've just been a really good family rifle brand, for me and my family. But once again, I say that, and I'm using my Tika mostly every year. But there's so many good brands out there too, that if somebody gives me a Savage or a good deal on this or that, I mean, I'm going to buy it.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Next question. Favorite hunting app?
My favorite hunting app, honestly, would be the company that I'm involved with called Spartan Forge Technology. Similar to like Onyx, they have a lot of mapping features, but what I'm most interested in with Spartan Forge is it also predicts deer movement through artificial intelligence. And that's maybe for a whole nother podcast, or maybe you'd want to interview one of their guys sometime. But I love the app because it's very interested in deer movement like me, and they do their own studies and stuff like that. So I just think it's something really cool, and kind of it's in a league of its own compared to a lot of different apps related to hunting.
Nice. Next question. Favorite rifle optics?
Loophole has probably been, I mean, and that's something I've been very picky about, but like Loophole has just outdone so many other scopes for us. A lot of our family Rugers, the Loopholes are 40, 50 years old, and those guns haven't even had to ever been resighted in. I've never had a loophole fog on me. And once again, I know there's some other really good brands out there, but that is something that I think is extremely important. I think there's also a lot of bad scope brands out there too. I'm not going to say the names, but I used to tell people, especially my clients, that a lot of my rifles, and I almost recommend this, a lot of my scopes that I put on my guns cost 2 times more than the gun itself, because I feel like if you take good care of a gun, you keep it clean, it'll shoot accurate forever. But like scopes, it just kills you when the slightest little bump, you bump a tree or you fall, then it's off, or they get fogged up. Or I've seen so many different hunters using cheap scopes and having problems with them, where it's like you just kill yourself, or you just you can ruin a whole season getting that one opportunity at a good buck and your gun being off. Where I really think having a good quality brand, scope makes a huge difference.
I learned my lesson on that. That exact thing happened to me 4 years ago. I'll just tell a story real quick. 4 years ago, I was out hunting and had a doe come out about 200 yards. And I had sighted in my rifle before rifle season, good to go. Doe comes out 200 yards. I drop her. She doesn't move, drops right where she stands. One shot, it was it. Well, it wasn't 10 minutes later. The biggest buck I've ever seen in my entire life comes right out there where she's at. And I mean, he's a monster. I get him lined up in my scope. I'm steady. I've got, shooting sticks and the whole deal. I got him dead on, broadside, perfect shot. I fire away, and that deer doesn't move. I'm like, what the hell? Takes 2 steps, 3 steps, moves a little bit. I get him lined back up, torch another one off. That deer doesn't move. He takes a couple more steps, and I'm hunting a power line cut. It's about 100 yards wide. He takes a few more steps, and I'm like, what the hell? I get him lined up again. I torch a third one off. Doesn't move. Takes a few more steps. He's off in the woods and gone. I'm like, what in the hell happened? So I'm pissed. I leave. I quit hunting. I go back to deer camp. I'm like, something's wrong with my gun. After I had shot that doe, something in my scope had jarred loose, and it was completely off big time after that one shot on that one doe. And I missed the biggest buck of my life.
Exactly.
I was so mad, man. So I went and spent some real money and got a real scope before the next year.
No, I mean the scope on my Tika is a almost $3,000 scope, and I only paid, I think, like $700 for the gun. And I'm not saying you have to be that extreme, but like the way I hunt, I'm mostly a still hunter. I cover tons of miles, fall in, banging against things. Like my guns take a beating, and I can't afford to, pull up on a big buck and to take that chance. I mean, you might not have to go as extreme as me, but I would say you can't go wrong with a good quality name brand, scope on your deer rifle. You can't go wrong.
Man, I've never been so upset. I mean, it was a, $300-400 scope that was on there. And I was like, dude, I've never been so sick in my life. But I mean, we went back to camp and I put it up against a target at 100 yards, 50 yards. I couldn't even hit the damn target. So,
wow.
Something had just busted loose in there and it was way off. But anyway, back to the question.
You live and learn.
Yeah, absolutely. Favorite social media platform?
Probably Instagram, although I mean Instagram and Facebook are pretty much the only 2 platforms, that I'm involved with. They've both been a huge help to me. I know there's a lot of people that hate both and hate all social media, but as of right now, like my guide service, I don't even have a website. I book all my hunts through social media. That's where I do all my marketing. So I have to be thankful, although there's a lot of stuff on social media that I can't stand to see, but also leads me to people like you guys, and it's been a lot of good that's come out of it for me as well, but probably like Instagram more than Facebook.
Awesome, brother. Last and final question. Who are your top 3 favorite social media accounts that you follow?
Let's see here. Hunting related, I would say, once again, I really like Realtree, just because I've been following those guys, for a long, long time. When I was a kid, I'm talking even before I was old enough to hunt, like every monster buck video, as soon as one came out on the market, like, I always enjoyed that, because they were one of the first to really, advertise, or maybe it's not advertise, but like they were the first to really market hunting through filming, or at least from what I saw, whatever. So I've always been a big fan of them. Bunch of great guys. So I still follow them on social media. Um, Other than that, I follow a lot of companies that I deal with. Like, I follow Spartan Forge Technology. And even I mentioned Loophole, like the products that I use and things that I use, that help me as a hunter. Like I like to follow the things that I believe in through social media.
Awesome. Well, brother, that's all the quick draw questions I got for you. You did a good job. So.
Thank you. No, I had a great time talking to you guys. It went by pretty fast. I know we probably could have went over a lot of other things too, especially related to trail cams and deer movement, but I'm sure there'll be another time, hopefully.
We'll have you back on here. Pat, you got any final thoughts there?
No, I did have one question. Do you hunt out of state any place other than Pennsylvania, or do you just mainly Pennsylvania? Since with your guide service and everything, it just kind of ties you down there. Or do you get the chance to travel some?
Well, fortunately, I live like 20 miles or not even really, roughly 20 minutes from the New York border. And there's a lot of public land as soon as I get into New York. So I do hunt New York, but other than that, I honestly don't have much time to travel and hunt other states. People think when you're a business owner, like, oh, you got it made, you get to do whatever you want. But at least in the businesses that I'm in, like, it's hard for me to ever get away and, to hunt other states. But there's a lot of places I'd love to go, like, not maybe the places where the majority of hunters want to go, but I'm a big fan of big woods hunting, mountain stuff like that. So I've always wanted to hunt like the Adirondacks in New York or the Allagash up in Maine. I like places that are really hard. Like I'm probably not the biggest fan of like going somewhere where there's 200-inch deer, but I want to go somewhere where if I kill a good buck, like, man, you did almost the impossible. Like that's where I'm more into the challenge of the hunt than anything else. So I like to really test myself.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate everything you've done, and the data. I know it's helped me and everybody listening. I'm sure they're gonna start watching some temperatures too. That 30-30, right? They're gonna,
I'm
right? Not
telling you,
only a good caliber, but it's a good thing to remember.
that's a
30
good
degrees
way
in
to.
30 days. Yes,
Yeah,
sir.
the 30-30 is the best way to remember that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Go ahead, Kix.
I was just going to ask you, is this information published anywhere where people can look at it?
It will be published on my social media. Eventually, I used to have a website. Long story short, I just got tired of dealing with it. We're going to get a website up and running again, hopefully in the next few months. Probably something we'll post on there, but you can find me either on Instagram or social media. Just look up Sherk's Guide Service, SHERK' Guide Service. And I post a lot of information, especially this time of year. As I go through data, sometimes I'll just bring up a certain date that spiked and kind of speak reason about what happened. And I write a lot of little articles and things like that. So if you're someone that doesn't follow me, feel free to, because especially when the guiding season's over, like I'm always looking for a way to try to help other hunters. I'm not trying to pat myself on the back. It's just something I like to do. I like to write articles, share knowledge, talk with people like you. Like it's just a lot of fun.
Awesome. Well, Steve, I own a company called Velvet Ridge Media, and it's just getting started, but been doing it for a long time. Finally decided to turn it into a business. If you need help building that website, you let me know, man. We'll work it out.
All right, bud. Thanks a lot. I'll keep that in mind.
Awesome. Well, guys, we're going to go ahead and let Steve go. We're going to let Pat go. Pat, I appreciate you jumping on here and being my co-host this evening. Thank you very much.
Well, absolutely. Thank you for asking. Been great. It's very nice to meet you, Steve. A lot of great information.
Yeah, same. Likewise to you guys, and definitely want to make sure you both have a Merry Christmas. Blessings to you and your families throughout the holidays, and the same for everyone that's listening.
Awesome. Steve, I appreciate you coming on, brother. Thank you for the information. We'll get you back on here again. We'll go into further detail after you get this year published. How's that sound?
You got it. Sounds like a plan.
Awesome. Guys, thank you for tuning in to this episode of the Basecamp Country podcast. Remember, here at Basecamp Country, it's more than just dirt. It's a lifestyle. Follow us on social media at Basecamp Country everywhere. We will see you guys again next week right here on the Basecamp Country Real Estate Podcast.